I was standing in the living room at 18, clutching my acceptance letter and scholarship details with shaking hands. The paper felt thin, like it might tear from my grip. My father sat in his armchair, not looking at me. "If you leave this house for that useless dream," he said, his voice cold and final, "don't come back." I stared at him, waiting for him to take it back, to say he was just angry. He didn't. Instead, he stood up and walked to the bookshelf where he kept the family record book, the leather-bound book where every important family event was documented: births, marriages, achievements. He opened it to the page with my name written in his careful handwriting. Without hesitation, he tore the page out. The sound of ripping paper echoed in the silent room. "You're no longer my daughter," he said, holding the torn page. My mother stood in the doorway, watching. She said nothing. Not a word in my defense. He looked at his watch. "You have 1 hour to pack and leave." I packed in complete silence, my hands moving automatically, clothes into a duffel bag, my laptop, a few books. My mother appeared in the doorway of my bedroom once, her face blank. "Mom," I said quietly, hoping she'd stop this. She turned and walked away without speaking. I heard my father downstairs, moving around, making phone calls. His voice was casual, like he was discussing the weather. When I came down with my bags, he was waiting by the door. "The key," he said, holding out his hand. I gave him my house key. As I walked down the driveway, I heard the locks clicking behind me. He was changing them before I even reached the gate. I stood on the sidewalk, 2 bags at my feet, staring at the house I'd grown up in. The porch light went off. I pulled out my phone and called my friend Hannah. "Can I stay with you tonight?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just tonight. I'll figure something out tomorrow." I had nowhere else to go. I spent my first night on Hannah's couch, replaying my father's words over and over. "You're no longer my daughter." How do you stop being someone's child? How does a parent just decide that? I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him tearing that page from the family book. At 3 a.m, I checked my bank account on my phone. $240. That was everything I had saved from my part-time job at the library. Rent, food, transportation. I did the math. It wouldn't last 2 weeks. Hannah's mom made breakfast in the morning and didn't ask questions, but I could see the concern in her eyes. I thanked them and said I'd be back late. I had to start looking for work. Real work. As I was leaving, my phone buzzed. A text from my father. My stomach dropped. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe he realized what he'd done. I opened the message. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. The text was clear and cruel. "You are forbidden from using the family name in public or professionally. If anyone asks, you are not my daughter. I will not have you embarrassing this family with your choices." I stared at the message, reading it 3 times. Then another text came through. "I've told the relatives you ran away, that you chose disgrace over family. Don't expect sympathy." I sat down on the bus stop bench, feeling sick. He was rewriting the story before I even had a chance to tell my side, making me the villain. Over the next few days, I learned he'd been thorough. My aunt called Hannah's house looking for me. When I called her back, she was cold. "Your father says you abandoned the family for some foolish school program. He's heartbroken." Heartbroken. The word was almost funny. "That's not what happened," I started to explain. "You always were. Difficult," she interrupted. "Too proud for your own good." She hung up before I could respond. He'd already turned them all against me. Every single one. 2 weeks later, there was a family gathering I wasn't invited to. Hannah heard about it from her cousin, who was friends with my cousin. I shouldn't have gone. I knew I shouldn't, but something pulled me there, some desperate need to be seen. I stood outside the restaurant, looking through the window. I could see my father at the head of the table, laughing. My mother beside him, smiling. My aunts and uncles, my cousins, all gathered together like nothing had changed, like I'd never existed. I was about to leave when I heard voices near the entrance. My aunt was smoking outside with another relative. "She's too proud to crawl back," my aunt said, her voice carrying in the night air. "Always thought she was better than everyone." My father's voice responded. "He must have come outside. Let her learn the hard way," he said calmly. "Some people need to fail before they understand their place." They were talking about me, standing there casually discussing my failure like it was inevitable, expected. almost deserved. I walked away before they could see me. That night, lying on Hannah's couch again, I made a decision. I would never beg him, even if it destroyed me. I juggled school and 2 jobs, barely sleeping. Morning shifts at a coffee shop, evening shifts cleaning offices, classes in between when I could make it. I skipped meals to save money, bought the cheapest food I could find, instant noodles, day-old bread. I lost weight I didn't have to lose. People at school started noticing. "Are you okay?" a classmate asked. "You look tired." I smiled and said I was fine. One night, 3 months in, I was cleaning an office building when the room started spinning. I tried to steady myself against a desk, but my legs gave out. I woke up on the floor, not sure how long I'd been there. My supervisor found me. She called an ambulance despite my protests. At the hospital, they said I'd fainted from exhaustion and malnutrition. They gave me fluids and a lecture about taking care of myself. I nodded and promised I would. A week later, the hospital bill arrived at Hannah's house. $3,000. I stared at the number until it blurred. I had $400 in my account. I'd been so careful, so disciplined. It didn't matter. I was drowning anyway. I sat on Hannah's couch with the hospital bill in my hands, trying not to panic. I'd avoided it for 3 months, but I was out of options. I needed help, real help. I picked up my phone and dialed my father's number before I could talk myself out of it. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Yes?" His voice was neutral, like I was a telemarketer. "Dad," I said, my voice barely steady. "It's me." Silence. "Then I know who it is." I took a breath. "I'm in trouble. I have a hospital bill I can't pay. I just need—" "You need money," he interrupted. "Of course you do. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I fainted at work and—" He laughed. Actually laughed. "Failure suits you," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "I knew you couldn't handle the real world. Too weak, too stubborn to admit you were wrong. I'm not asking you to." The line went dead. He'd hung up. Mid-sentence. I called back. It went straight to voicemail. He'd blocked my number. I sat there crying, alone in Hannah's apartment while she was at work. I cried until I couldn't breathe, until my throat hurt, until there were no tears left. When I finally stopped, something had changed inside me. The part of me that still hoped he'd come around, that still wanted his approval, died that night. I made myself a promise, quiet and private. If I ever succeeded at anything, I would never let him take credit for it. Never let him claim he supported me. Never let him rewrite history. I went to the registrar's office the next day and changed my professional name on all my school documents. No last name, just my first name. If he didn't want me using his name, fine, I wouldn't. 2 weeks later, I was working at the coffee shop when a woman came in regularly. She was a designer, always working on her laptop in the corner. One day, she asked if I was in school. I told her yes. She looked at my sketches I'd been drawing during my break. "These are good," she said, "really good. Are you looking for experience?" An unexpected door had just opened. Her name was Victoria, and she ran a small design studio. "I can't pay you," she said honestly, "but I can teach you everything I know. The hours are brutal and there are no guarantees. Most interns quit within a month." I didn't hesitate. "I'll take it." The work was exactly as brutal as she'd warned. 18-hour days sometimes, redoing projects 5-6 times until they were perfect, learning software until my eyes burned. Victoria was demanding, sharp, and rarely gave praise. But she was fair. She taught me everything. Color theory, client management, design principles, business strategy. I soaked it all in like my life depended on it. Because it did. I was still working both jobs, still barely sleeping. Some days I ran on coffee and adrenaline. But I was learning a real skill, building something. 3 months in, Victoria gave me my first real project, small but mine, a logo for a local business. "Don't mess this up," she said. I didn't. Then I learned something about the industry. It was ruthless. People took credit for your work. Clients disappeared without paying. Contracts were broken. I was replaceable and everyone knew it. I was on the edge of quitting. 6 months of brutal hours, exploitation, clients who treated me like I was nothing. I designed an entire brand identity for a client who then refused to pay, claiming the work wasn't what they wanted. Victoria had shrugged. "Happens. Move on." I was exhausted, broke, and starting to think my father was right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I should have just stayed home, gotten a normal job, lived a normal life. Then I went to a family friend's house to drop something off for Hannah. I wasn't invited in, but I heard voices from the living room. My father's voice, loud and proud. My friend's son just landed a design contract with a major firm, he was saying. 23 years old and already making six figures. Now that's a child to be proud of. Someone with real talent and drive. I stood in the hallway, frozen. I was doing exactly what that person was doing. Working in design. Pushing myself, surviving on nothing. But I was disposable to him. Worthless. The rage that filled me was cold and sharp. I used it. It became fuel. 3 months later, I landed my first real contract. Not through Victoria, but on my own. A small tech startup needed branding work. They'd seen my portfolio online. The pay was modest but fair, enough to cover 2 months of rent. I celebrated alone in my tiny studio apartment I'd finally been able to afford. No champagne, no party. Just me, sitting on my second-hand couch, staring at the signed contract. My first real achievement. My first proof that I could do this. I called Hannah and told her. She screamed with excitement. "We have to celebrate." "I can't," I said, smiling. "I have 3 other projects due this week." But I felt something I hadn't felt in a year. Hope. The startup posted about their new branding on social media. It got shared. People noticed. I got 2 more inquiries that week. Then something ironic happened. I was scrolling through my feed when I saw my father had shared the startup's post. He was an investor in their parent company. He was praising their new direction, their fresh branding. My work. He had no idea it was mine. Over the next 6 months, I built a quiet reputation. My work was good, and people talked. I kept my rates reasonable and my standards high. I worked with several companies, always using just my first name professionally. One of those companies was in my father's network. I didn't know it when I took the job, but I found out later. He'd actually praised the work in a board meeting, told colleagues how impressed he was with the company's rebranding. My rebranding. At family gatherings I heard about through mutual friends, he'd apparently started bragging about supporting young designers, being a patron of the arts, encouraging new talent. The irony was so sharp it could cut. He was building his reputation partly on work I'd done, and he had no idea. My name was always hidden in the credits, buried in the acknowledgments. Just my first name, easy to miss, but the work spoke for itself. For now, that was enough. I wasn't ready to be visible yet. I was still building, still growing, still preparing. I went to court and legally changed my name, shortened it, cut the family surname completely. It felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. The day I signed the paperwork to legally change my name, I felt lighter than I had in 2 years. No more carrying his name, no more connection I didn't want. For the first time since I was 18, I felt completely free. I was just me, not his daughter, not part of his family legacy, just myself. I started using the new name everywhere. Professional profiles, contracts, business cards. It was clean, simple, memorable, mine. My work improved. Without the weight of his expectations or his rejection, I could create freely, take risks, try things I wouldn't have before. A national design competition was announced. Major companies sponsored it. The winner would get a cash prize, publicity, and contracts with some of the biggest firms in the country. The entry fee was steep, $200. I stared at the announcement for days, doing math. If I entered, I wouldn't be able to afford food for 2 weeks. If I didn't enter, I might never get another chance like this. I entered. I put everything into that project, every skill I'd learned, every late night, every failure that taught me something. Savings, reputation, health, all of it went into one portfolio submission. The deadline was in 30 days. I worked like I'd never worked before. 20-hour days. I stopped taking new clients, stopped going out, stopped doing anything except eating, sleeping barely, and designing. Victoria checked in on me. "You're going to burn out." "I know," I said, "but not before I finish this." I missed the preliminary deadline by technical issues and had to resubmit at the last second. My internet crashed twice. My computer froze. I was crying and rebuilding files at 11 at night. Hannah brought me food and made sure I ate. "You're scaring me," she said. I couldn't explain it to her. This wasn't just about winning. This was about proving something to myself. That I could compete at the highest level. That I belonged there. That my father was wrong about me. Failure would mean I'd spent my last money on nothing. I'd be back to square one, possibly homeless again. The risk was everything. With 1 hour before the final deadline, I submitted. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely click the button. Then I collapsed into bed and slept for 14 hours straight. I dreamed of my father telling me I was worthless. I woke up convinced I'd failed. The results were announced publicly 2 months later on a live stream. I watched alone in my apartment, too nervous to be around people. They went through category by category. Honorable mentions. Third place. Second place. I hadn't placed. I felt my heart sinking. Then they announced the grand prize winner. My name. My new name. Full and clear. The host was reading my bio, talking about my design philosophy, showing my work on the screen. I sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. My phone started ringing immediately. Victoria, Hannah, clients I'd worked with, strangers who'd found my profile. The prize was $50,000, more money than I'd seen in my entire life. But more than that, my name was everywhere. Design blogs picked it up, industry publications wrote articles, social media was sharing my work. Within 24 hours, I went from invisible to unavoidable. My profile was trending. People were celebrating my success. Strangers were congratulating me, sharing my story. Then someone made the connection. A distant relative commented on one of the articles, "Wait, is this the daughter of?" And just like that, my father knew. 3 days after my name went public, my phone rang from a number I'd deleted but still recognized. My father. I stared at it for 5 rings before answering. "Hello?" My voice was steady. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was warm, proud, almost affectionate. It was so different from the last time we'd spoken that I almost didn't recognize it. "Tell you what?" I asked carefully. "About your success. I saw the announcement. Your name is everywhere. This is incredible." I said nothing. "I always knew you had talent," he continued, as if the last 2 years hadn't happened. "I'm so proud of you." The words I'd wanted to hear at 18, now they meant nothing. "You told me not to use your name," I said calmly. The line went quiet. I was angry. You know how things were said in the heat of the moment. "You tore my page out of the family book," I reminded him. "You changed the locks before I reached the gate." More silence. Then, "We should meet. Talk about this properly. I think we should reconnect." I almost laughed. "Why now?" "Because you're my daughter," he said, as if it was obvious. "Let me take you to dinner. Somewhere nice, we can celebrate together." I agreed to meet him. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I needed to see this with my own eyes. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place he took important clients. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a prominent table where people could see him. He stood when he saw me, smiling widely. "There she is," he said loudly. Several people looked over. He hugged me. I stood stiff in his arms. Throughout dinner, he talked about how he'd always believed in me, how he knew I'd find my way, how families go through rough patches, but love perseveres. He ordered expensive wine and told the waiter, "We're celebrating my daughter's success." People at nearby tables overheard. Some recognized my name from the news. They congratulated us. My father beamed, accepting their praise like he'd contributed to it. "I always encouraged her creativity," he told a couple at the next table. "Even when it was difficult, I supported her dreams." I sat there watching him perform, watching him rewrite history in real time. He wanted credit, not reconciliation. He wanted to be known as the father of the successful designer. That was all this was. When he finally stopped talking, I spoke quietly. "You disowned me." He waved his hand dismissively. "Let's not dwell on the past. What matters is, you told me I was no longer your daughter," I continued. "You tore my page from the family book. You told relatives I ran away. You laughed when I called asking for help." His smile faltered. "You were young, stubborn. I thought tough love would—" "You blocked my number," I said. "When I fainted from malnutrition and called you from the hospital, you hung up on me." People at nearby tables had gone quiet. They were listening now. My father's face was turning red. "This isn't the time or place." "You told me failure suited me," I said, my voice still calm. "Those were your exact words." He stood up abruptly. "I think we should continue this conversation somewhere private." "No," I said simply. "We're done here." I stood, placed money on the table for my meal, and walked out. He called after me, but I didn't turn around. The next week, he called 5 times. I didn't answer. Then he sent an email asking me to be his guest at an industry event, a gala where major companies would be present. It would be good for both of us to be seen together, he wrote. I agreed, but not for the reason he thought. The gala was massive. Hundreds of people from my industry, executives, designers, innovators. My father arrived with my mother. He immediately started introducing me to people. This is my daughter, he'd say proudly. The award-winning designer. I'm so proud of what she's accomplished. He said it again and again, to everyone who would listen. My mother stood beside him, smiling softly, saying nothing, just like she'd said nothing when he threw me out. People congratulated him, told him he must be so proud. He accepted it all, glowing. At one point, someone asked him, what was it like watching her build her career? Challenging, he said smoothly, but I always knew she had it in her. We supported her through everything. I stood there listening, letting him talk, letting him build his narrative. Then the event organizers announced a special presentation. They'd prepared a video tribute to the competition winners. The lights dimmed. My story played on the massive screen, but this time they'd done research. They'd interviewed people who knew me. Victoria spoke about taking me on as an unpaid intern when I had nothing. Hannah talked about me sleeping on her couch for 8 months. Former clients mentioned I'd worked 3 jobs while building my portfolio. The video showed my timeline. Every struggle, every rejection, every night I'd worked until dawn. Then it showed something I hadn't expected. Hospital records from when I'd fainted, bills I'd paid off slowly, the tiny studio apartment where I'd worked, screenshots of my old portfolio with just my first name, no family connection mentioned anywhere. The narrative was clear. I'd done this alone. The video ended. The lights came up. Every eye in that room turned to find me. And then they turned to my father. Someone in the audience, a journalist I recognized, stood up. Mr. Harrison, she said clearly, the video mentioned your daughter was estranged from family during this period. How do you reconcile your current pride with that history? My father's face went pale. It's complicated. Family matters are. Your daughter nearly died from malnutrition while building this career. Another voice called out. Where was your support then? He couldn't answer. He looked at me, panicked, like I should defend him. I walked to the microphone calmly. The room went completely silent. I stood at the microphone looking out at hundreds of faces. My father was still standing in the crowd, frozen. I want to thank everyone who helped me get here, I said clearly. Victoria, who trained me for free when I had nothing to offer. Hannah, who gave me a couch to sleep on for 8 months. The clients who took a chance on an unknown designer with no credentials. I paused. Success didn't come from family pride or support. It came from survival, from people who believed in me when I had nothing, from refusing to quit, even when quitting would have been easier. The room was absolutely silent. I don't say this with bitterness. I say it because it's true. And because erasing that truth would dishonor everyone who actually helped me. I looked directly at my father. I'm grateful for what I learned. Being disowned taught me I didn't need approval to have value. Struggling alone taught me I was stronger than I thought. And succeeding without support taught me exactly who I am. The applause started slowly, then built until it filled the entire room. It went on for a full minute. My father stood there, unable to move, as the applause drowned out everything else. When it finally stopped, I stepped away from the microphone and walked out. I was in my hotel room an hour later when someone knocked. I looked through the peephole. My father. I considered not opening it, but I did. He stood in the hallway, and for the first time in my life, he looked small, uncertain. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I let him in. He sat on the chair by the window, not meeting my eyes. I'm sorry, he said finally, for all of it, for throwing you out, for laughing when you asked for help, for everything. I sat on the bed watching him. He was crying. My father, who I'd never seen cry, had tears running down his face. I was wrong, he continued. I thought I was teaching you a lesson. I thought you'd fail and come back humbled. I didn't think. He stopped. I didn't think you'd actually make it without me. And when you did, I couldn't handle it, so I tried to take credit. I said nothing. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he said, but I'm asking for a chance to try to make this right, to be your father again. I looked at him for a long time. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Not yet, maybe not ever. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I understand. But I'm willing to talk, I continued. On my terms, slowly, with no promises. Anything, he said quickly. Whatever you need. I shook my head. That's not how this works. You don't get to decide the terms. I do. If we rebuild anything, it happens because I choose it. Not because you want credit, not because it looks good, because I decide you've earned it. He looked like I'd slapped him. I know, he said quietly. You're right. If you ever try to take credit for my success again, I said clearly, we're done, permanently. Do you understand? He nodded. I do. And you apologize to Hannah, to Victoria, to everyone you told I ran away. You tell them the truth. I will, he promised. I stood up. You should go now. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk again, if I'm ready. He stood, hesitating like he wanted to hug me. I didn't move. He left. I sat in the hotel room alone, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but possibility. The possibility that one day maybe we could find something new, not what we had before, something honest. Over the next year, my father and I talked occasionally, brief phone calls, careful conversations. He never pushed, never asked for more than I was willing to give. He apologized to Hannah, to Victoria. He even posted on social media correcting the narrative, admitting he'd been wrong about my choices. Some relatives reached out to apologize, others didn't. I didn't chase their approval. I was too busy building my career. My company grew. I hired staff, took on bigger clients, won more awards. My name became permanently associated with innovative design. 3 years after that gala, my father and I had dinner. Just the two of us. It was awkward but not painful. We talked about work, about life, about safe topics. I saw your latest campaign, he said. It's brilliant. Thank you, I replied. I'm not asking for credit, he added quickly. I just want you to know I'm proud. And I know I have no right to be, but I am. I looked at him. You can be proud, I said. Just don't claim you helped. He nodded. I won't, I promise. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, a small, careful beginning. 5 years after he disowned me, my name was permanently etched into my industry. Awards lined my office. My work was taught in design schools. Publications called me an innovator, a pioneer. When people mentioned my father now, it was always in relation to me, her father, not the other way around. I attended an industry dinner where someone introduced him as the father of the renowned designer. He didn't correct them, didn't try to claim credit, just smiled and said, yes, she's extraordinary. After the dinner, we walked to our cars together. I never apologized to you properly at 18, he said, for the dreams I called useless, for the future I tried to take from you. No, I agreed. You didn't. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it. I looked at him, this man who'd broken me, who'd forced me to rebuild myself from nothing. Being disowned was the worst thing that ever happened to me, I said honestly. It was also the thing that made me who I am. He looked like he might cry again. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, I continued, but losing me cost you more than keeping me ever would have. He nodded. I know. I got in my car and drove away. Not angry, not bitter, just free. My name stood exactly where his pride used to be, and I'd put it there myself.